They threw us under the bus to get close to whiteness. Now the bus is backing up over them, and suddenly they want our solidarity. Let me tell you about one of the oldest games in American racism, divide and conquer. And let me tell you about the people who fell for it, who made deals with white supremacy thinking they'd get a seat at the table only to discover they were always on the menu. We're watching it play out in real time right now, and honestly, the schadenfreude is real. Not because I enjoy seeing people suffer, but because some lessons can only be learned the hard way, and this one's been coming for a long time. Here's how the deal works, how it's always worked. Immigrant groups come to America, and they quickly learn the social hierarchy. They see black folks at the bottom, and they see white folks at the top. They figure out real fast that proximity to whiteness equals access to resources, safety, opportunity. So they make a calculation. Distance ourselves from blackness, align with whiteness, and we'll be okay. They adopt anti-black attitudes. They repeat anti-black stereotypes. They actively discriminate against black people in their businesses, their communities, their hiring. They support policies that harm black communities. They stay silent when we're brutalized. Some even participate in the brutalization. All of this in exchange for conditional acceptance, for a chance to climb the ladder, for the promise that if they prove they're not like those black people, they'll be treated better. And for a while, it works. Sort of. They get small business loans that black folks get denied. They get to move into neighborhoods that redlining kept black families out of. They get immigrant success stories written about them while black poverty gets pathologized. They get held up as model minorities, as examples of what happens when people work hard and don't complain. Implicit comparison to black folks who supposedly don't do those things. They become the wedge, the tool that white supremacy uses to deny that racism exists. Look, they say, these people came here with nothing and succeeded, so clearly the problem is black culture, not systemic racism. But here's what they didn't understand, what they refused to see even when black folks tried to tell them. White supremacy doesn't actually want partners. It wants buffers. It wants tools. It wants disposable allies who can be used and discarded when they're no longer useful. The deal was never real. It was always conditional, and the conditions are changing. White America is looking at demographic projections, and they're panicking. Their numbers are declining. The browning of America that they've feared is happening. And suddenly, all these groups they made conditional deals with, all these immigrants they positioned as better than black folks, they're looking real expendable. Because here's the cold calculus. When you're trying to maintain white dominance and white numbers are declining, you can't keep letting in all these brown and black immigrants who are changing the demographics. The deal is over. The usefulness has expired. Look at what's happening right now with immigration policy, with the rhetoric, with the violence. Latinos who thought their anti-blackness would protect them are getting rounded up, are getting their families separated, are getting told to go back where they came from. Asians who thought being model minorities would insulate them are getting attacked in the streets, are getting blamed for pandemics, are getting scapegoated for economic anxiety. Muslims who thought keeping their heads down would keep them safe are still getting surveilled, still getting banned, still getting treated as terrorists. All these groups that made deals that threw black folks under the bus, that position themselves as different from and better than us, they're finding out that to white supremacy, they were never really different. They were just useful, and now they're not. And here's the kicker. Here's the part that really makes this whole situation peak irony. They can't use these groups against Black America the way they used to because we delineated. Let me break down why this matters so much, because delineation changed the entire game. For decades, white supremacy had a perfect scam running with black immigrants. They'd bring in black folks from the Caribbean, from Africa, from wherever, and they'd use them to undermine black American-specific claims. They'd point to black immigrants' relative success and say, see, racism isn't the problem, culture is the problem. These black immigrants are doing fine. They'd put black immigrants in positions of symbolic representation as spokespersons for blackness, while ignoring or actively suppressing black American voices. They'd use black immigrants to infiltrate our movements, to dilute our demands, to muddy our message, to argue against reparations, to claim that all black people are the same, so black Americans don't deserve specific redress for specific harms. But then Black Americans said, no more. We delineated. We said clearly and publicly that we are a specific ethnic group with a specific history and specific claims to this country. We said that Black immigrants, while they may face racism, do not share our particular lineage of slavery, Jim Crow, domestic terrorism, and ongoing systemic oppression that was designed specifically to subjugate us. We said that we can have solidarity with other Black people around the world without pretending that all Blackness is the same or that everyone has the same claims to American remedies. We drew a line, and that line broke their game. Suddenly, they couldn't prop up a Nigerian immigrant as proof that Black Americans are just making excuses. They couldn't use a Jamaican success story to deny the need for Black American reparations. They couldn't install Black immigrants as leaders of movements demanding justice for Black Americans. The infiltration stopped. The dilution stopped. The gaslighting stopped working as well. We took control of our narrative, our identity, our demands. We said, we are Black Americans, descendants of American slavery, and we have specific business with this country that nobody else can speak to or negotiate on our behalf. So now white supremacy has lost that tool. They can't use Black immigrants against us anymore because we don't accept them as us in the political sense. We have solidarity, we have kinship, we can work together on shared issues, but they don't get to represent us, speak for us, or be used as examples to deny our reality. That weapon is gone from their arsenal, and all these other immigrant groups who thought they'd be useful indefinitely, they're discovering they were only useful for specific purposes. And those purposes are expiring. They were useful for keeping wages down. They were useful for doing jobs white folks didn't want to do. They were useful as props in the America is not racist narrative. They were useful as wedges against Black American demands. But now, white America is looking at maintaining demographic dominance, and that means these groups have to go, or at least be marginalized so severely that they can't challenge white power. Now these groups are experiencing the racism that we've been experiencing for 400 years, and suddenly they want solidarity. Suddenly they want coalition. Suddenly they want Black folks to show up for them, to protest for them, to use our political power on their behalf, to extend our movements to cover their issues. And I'm watching this with my head tilted because where was this energy before? Where were they when we were getting killed by police? They were silent or actively cheering it on, talking about how we should just comply, how we were thugs who deserved it. Where were they when we were demanding reparations? They were calling us entitled, saying we needed to get over slavery, claiming they came here with nothing and succeeded so we should too. Where were they when we were fighting mass incarceration? They were buying into the super predator narrative, locking their car doors when we walked by, clutching their purses, calling the police on our children. Where were they when we were being economically exploited? They were opening businesses in our neighborhoods and extracting wealth while treating us like criminals, refusing to hire us, following us around their stores. They called us lazy. They called us violent. They called us welfare queens and deadbeat dads. They said we make everything about race. They said we have victim mentalities. They said if we just worked hard and stopped complaining, we'd be fine. They said racism wasn't real. It was just our imagination, our excuse for personal failures. They aligned with the very system oppressing us, and they did it enthusiastically, strategically, deliberately. They made their choice. They chose proximity to whiteness over solidarity with us. They chose conditional acceptance over collective liberation. They made their bed, and now they want us to help them out of it. Now they want our organizing expertise, our protest strategies, our political infrastructure, our moral authority, our coalition. Now they want to talk about people of color solidarity and how we're all in this together. Miss me with that completely. Here's my position, and I'm going to be very clear about it because this is important. I'm not interested in solidarity with people who only want solidarity when they're the ones in trouble. I'm not interested in coalition with groups who threw us under the bus and are now surprised the bus ran them over too. I'm not interested in extending our limited political capital, our hard-won organizing infrastructure, our moral authority earned through centuries of struggle to people who actively undermine that struggle when it suited them. Does that mean I'm celebrating their suffering? No. Does it mean I think they deserve racist violence? No. Does it mean I'm incapable of human empathy? No. What it means is that I understand strategic resource allocation and I understand that our community has limited resources, limited energy, limited political power, and we need to use those resources for our specific liberation, not for people who contributed to our oppression. They made a deal with white supremacy. They thought it would protect them. They were wrong. That's not my problem to solve. That's their lesson to learn. And maybe, just maybe, some of them will learn it. Maybe some of them will understand that the only way to actually defeat white supremacy is to refuse to make deals with it, to refuse to position yourself as better than other oppressed people, to refuse to participate in the oppression of others for your own advancement. Maybe some of them will understand that true solidarity requires showing up before you need help, not just when you do. But until then, until I see genuine accountability for the anti-Blackness, until I see genuine apology for the complicity, until I see genuine changed behavior that isn't just motivated by self-interest, I'm not interested. We told them this would happen. We warned them. We said, white supremacy will use you and discard you. We said, you can't buy safety with our suffering. We said, the only way out is through collective liberation, not individual proximity to power. They didn't listen. They chose differently. So now here we are. They're experiencing a fraction of what we've experienced for centuries, and they want rescue. But we're not the fire department for people who set fires. We're not the safety net for people who cut holes in ours. We're not the solution to problems they helped create. They wanted to be close to whiteness. They're close to it now. They're close enough to see what it really is, close enough to experience what it does to people it considers disposable. Welcome to the lesson. Class is in session. And before anyone starts with the "we need unity" talk, let me be clear about something. Unity requires mutuality. It requires reciprocity. It requires people showing up for each other before crisis, not just during it. It requires genuine relationship, not transactional allyship. It requires accountability for harm done. None of that exists here. What exists is a bunch of groups who made bad strategic calculations, discovering the consequences of those calculations, and wanting Black folks to bail them out. That's not unity. That's exploitation attempting to rebrand. My advice to these groups, figure it out the way we've had to figure it out. Organize your communities, build your own political power, develop your own strategies, learn the lessons we learned through centuries of struggle. And while you're doing that, maybe reflect on the choices you made, the people you aligned with, the communities you harmed. Maybe do some actual accountability work. Maybe make some genuine amends. Maybe show up for Black liberation, not because you need something from us, but because it's the right thing to do. And then maybe we can talk about coalition. Maybe then we can talk about solidarity. But until then, you're on your own. You made a deal with the devil. That's between you and him. We tried to tell you. You didn't listen. Now you know. And knowing is half the battle. The other half is fighting it yourself.